Welcome back, everybody,
Hey, everyone.
to day 16 of Breaking Through Your Matrix Programming. My name is Jona, Bryndis.
And I'm Jeff Casper.
And we are your energy coaches / energy healers, energy trainers here for this and life energy training lesson, Karmic Purpose. Thank you, everybody, for watching and for coming. Today, we're going to talk about some of the even deeper layers of why we have these patterns that we've talked about yesterday and throughout the past 15 days. These recurring and persistent things in us that keep holding us back from making the changes that we want to, or in many of our cases also finding out what it really is that we want to change. And so here it feels like we're backtracking a little bit because we want to come back to purpose, to the beginning of this journey here of why we are looking at the matrix programming in us and what it is that we are encountering in our journey here of liberating ourselves from potential outer or inner influences. And we started out with reframing the word purpose for you and reminding you that it's not so much just the intention that you have, it's not just the idea or the mental thought that brings, in the energy of your manifestation and how things play out in your life, but it has a lot to do with the inner alignment to things. And as we have examined here already in these past days, there are many different layers of that, many of which are unaware to us, unconscious to us, or simply invisible to us, and they will stay invisible. This is something that we've taught you here already, to accept that some things won't be fully aware to you ever. So when it comes to like dealing with or facing some of these inner impedances, these inner dissonances, these inner imbalances, we often get to a place on our journey where we don't really know what it is that we need to let go of. All we know is that this is not serving us any longer. And so it's good to develop this attitude towards your journey that all experiences are learning experiences, experiences of growth, even the ones that appear to be miserable at a certain point in time. And the reason why this makes sense to look at everything that way is because of what we now know from bringing in not just the physical, emotional, mental, social and spiritual component, but also the energetic component. And that is, there are things, that are very difficult for us to address because we never get past our ego really to fully be able to see this, to fully understand what these blind spots really are. And as we move forward here in our energy training, we're moving into a more sophisticated understanding of energy work, which needs to imply that there are things in our system, in our energy body, as we call it, that cannot truly be understood by the mind. So we've talked about the limitations here of our ego perception. But before we dive into how we can become a more active participant in our life and our life story, and how to release some of these etheric binds or etheric patterns that we have that we can't even see, I want to give you all a heartfelt welcome. Thank you for letting us know where you're from. This is awesome. Don't forget to push the like button. Help us to share these videos. We need your help here. We do not have a big marketing machine going, so this is the only way for us to relay this information to you. Thank you all for your support. Once more, the reason why we do this live is to be able to comment or reply to some of your questions or some of your sharings here. So please use this opportunity to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
In this lesson, I'm sure there will be a lot of questions that come up, and if you don't know how to formulate this right away, then don't shy away from texting here in the commentary of the video. We'll respond to you.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. All right, so karmic purpose already hints at where this is going. Okay, karma. And these days, karma is a word that has moved into sort of the mainstream vocabulary. Everybody kind of uses the word in one way or another, but there's also a lot of misconception around the word karma, and we want to use energy work here to maybe neutralize some of that mainstream understanding, but also to bring in a larger perspective, to bring in the larger context. And then we're going to show you how this is related to matrix programming in you and around you, which will then lead us back the first day, the beginning, namely, what is our true purpose, really? And many of us struggle with this question, understandably, because until we get a full picture of what we're dealing with, it's very difficult to agree to our inner guidance, or inner promptings or synchronicities or our life's experiences as part of our purpose. So to a degree, karma, or working with karma in the sense that energy work guides us, can increase our understanding, our greater understanding of why we're here, why we came here. Mm-hmm. Not so much in the sense of destiny. I really want to point this out here, that we're not talking about karma in the sense of everything is predetermined. So we will run into the philosophical question of do we actually have a free will? And that's something that has to do with the consciousness level or the energetic state that we are in. Mm-hmm. So based on the energetic state that we are in, as we've already discussed here in these previous days, we will see ourselves and the world around us in a certain light. It restricts our abilities and our perception to the current state and below. In other words, if we are caught in anger, as an example, we can only see ourselves and the world or others based on that energy level with the limited perception that comes in through that. We also only have access to abilities that are tied to anger, namely, we become really good at fighting things and going against things and getting angry or getting disdainful or sarcastic or cynical, and below. Mm-hmm. And below anger is fear, and below fear is pain, and below pain is shame and guilt. So remember that when we are looking at karma here, we are looking at it from a larger perspective, from a higher vibratory standpoint. And while you not may be able to read this here in the live stream, you may have downloaded this chart already. This is the same chart that I showed yesterday, although I'm bringing in a different aspect here, and that is the transcendence of karma. We'll get to that here in a minute. Mm-hmm. But I do want to remind you that when you are in a state such as anger or pain or fear, you are limited to the abilities, to the viewpoints, and the emotional, mental, physical expressions of that state.
So you still have the right to choose, but you're stuck at those levels. Without the ability to go past that and change your energetic state, your choices become, the lower you go on that scale, the less choices you have.
Let's back up here a little bit and define karma for you from a energetic point of view. When it comes to certain propensities that we have, they appear to be predestined, such as, for instance, being born as a male or a female. That is one of the easiest karmic attachments that we can all understand, right? Because it brings in a propensity for us to experience the world through the eyes, through the limited view of a female or a male. Everybody understands that. At the same time, there are things such as the ethnic group, the cultural group, the geographical location, the kind of family, the kind of neighborhood, the kind of village that we are born into. All these things produce propensities for our life. Now, making changes and finding the true purpose in our life that provides fulfillment and the expression of our highest potential, of course, entails the breaking out. And remember, yesterday we talked about how to shift our energy. And this is really what the basic practice underneath all that is. And every of our energy lessons here has that shifting aspect to it. So identifying where you're at and then learning how to shift out of it, and ultimately finding the higher vibratory goal that you want to align yourself to. So it's always related to the past, the present, and the future. The past is what brings in the original propensity. The present brings in the choice in the moment through the alignment, and then the future brings in the purpose, brings in the goal or the direction. And karma is something that is linked to our past, but it plays into our present moment and can therefore influence the way we see our choices. This is really what a propensity is. A propensity is a tendency that we have just based on the overall conditions. Okay. Now, if you go a step further and would take out all the religious or esoteric connotation here of karma, then you can also see that there are things in your life, such as recurrent experiences, especially the negative ones, persistent patterns and so forth, that you are up against when you want to shift. And this is now what we want to talk about, namely, how can we contextualize, our propensities or the conditions that we were born into with where we want to go. And there's a connection between these. Energy work shows us that people carry these propensities and these karmic setups that they have as a thread, as almost like a source code programming in their energy body. And this leads us to understand that there must be a reason for these propensities that we all are dealing with. Most people, when they hear the word karma, they thinking of reincarnation and past lives. I want to just point this out here, that past lives can play into this, but they're not really what karma is about. Karma, in an energetic sense, is about the energetic balance or imbalance within your energy system that was created through past actions, thoughts, emotions, or pre-existing ties. All right, and this can be anything in your immediate past or in your long distance past, including past lives or past existences. People are very limited here in understanding that past lives do not always just relate to human past lives. Follow me here on seeing karma really just as an energetic propensity. And so, in other words, there are things that, like, say, and this is what most of us probably understand, even my kids use the word instant karma. There's something that you do or choose to do right now, or choose to feel or say, that it creates an immediate effect on your environment, on other people, or you stump your toe or whatever as a result of what just happened. So this is really based on our understanding that everything is connected. And the reason why I'm showing you this chart here and bringing our energetic state into context with that is for two reasons. First of all, when we are caught in the red zone, when we are caught in our ego states, we do not have free will. We are simply caught in our personal and collective karmic experience that is determined by the overall human collective task. All right, so as long as you are bound to your ego, you are binding yourself to a larger karmic propensity that is not even yours. Once you go beyond the threshold of truth, which you see here in the middle, that's the white threshold that divides these contractive ego states from expansive true self states, then you will begin to feel a liberation from karmic collective experiences. You will begin to see the world differently than most people around you. And you will feel some personal things, you know, that tasks and things that keep repeating just for you. And this is then the part of your journey where you move into beginning to see your personal karmic attachments. And the second white bar that you see there that separates then our understanding of ourselves from the mental understanding into the heart conscious based understanding is then what can actually help us to liberate ourselves from our personal karma as well. So this is the reason why we have these thresholds there, and they become sort of markers, signposts on our journey, because as long as we are primarily attached to our ego, we will not, and I repeat this, we will not be able to escape the karmic collective, the human karmic collective experience, which, as we've already illuminated, is bound to specialness, pride, anger, fear, and pain. And victimhood was one of those recurring and very strong patterns that people perceive in their lives, as an example yesterday of matrix programming. So when I talk about matrix programming, I basically talk about the human collective experience. This is what we are dealing with. So when we want to break out of this, we need to learn how to shift out of the ego states that tie us, that attach us to collective karma. And once you know, or once you train yourself enough to do this, and you begin to move into the reconciliation phase with your personal karma, then you will begin to see that you have options, that you have choices, that you indeed have a true will. You still have propensities that you'll have to deal with, and we're going to look into the different kinds of karmic attachments that then can be discovered, but you also have the tools and the abilities of these higher vibratory states in access to you that allows you to transcend them. So this was a very brief overview of a very complex subject, namely how to understand karma in the energetic sense. But in a nutshell, it really means that everything that is recurring in your life, everything that displays itself as a persistent pattern, can be, at least arbitrarily, be looked at a karmic tie, a potential karmic tie.
Right, as it keeps coming up because there's a purpose there. The reason why it repeats is that you have an opportunity until you're ready to change. You're going to keep seeing that pattern. So when you keep seeing these patterns, that's a sign to you that I probably need to start looking at how I can modify this. What choices do I have? What choices am I making? And if I do some of the techniques we've been talking about, enhance the energy, then new ideas or new ways are going to show up to begin to change that.
Yeah, so karmic thread, you know, that weaves through your life can be identified through identifying these repeating patterns. That's why karma is often depicted as a wheel, because it feels like an ever-repeating type of things. In a practical sense, examples for that are for instance, being attracted to the same kind of people over and over again, getting ripped off over and over again, getting abused over and over again, running into the same kind of bosses, running into the same kind of friends, or
frustrations. Yeah, just the repetitive frustrations.
Anything that smells like a repeat, guys, points at karmic attachments. And then comes the interrelation of karmic dispositions. When people find together with same or similar karmic tasks, which expresses in karmic relationships. So you will have a tendency, just due to these propensities, to run into the same type of people that have either the sort of the opposite part of your karmic task as their task, or a similar one where you are going through a learning experience together to enhance the learning. Then we also have karmic relationships that we build in our lifetime, which are created through making vows, oaths, and agreements and pacts. Not just with spouses, like say in regards to ex-partners, but it can also be in regards to communities or churches or brotherhoods, or anything that has ever sort of created an etheric bind to something through a vow or an oath, can be visible, is visible as a karmic attachment. Anything that you resolve here in the now, or that you are, aligning yourself to resolve, will also immediately affect your children. But every person is born with their own karma.
Yes.
So don't misunderstand this in the sense that you are responsible for everything that happens to your children. That is not the case. Every person is born with their own karmic propensities at birth. And to a degree, when you fully understand what we mean with becoming an active participant in your life story, you will also begin to understand that you're an active participant in pre-writing your life story, namely before you're born, and in the sense of picking your parents with according karmic aspects that allow you to go through exactly the learning experience or healing experience that you need in this lifetime to provide you with the right conditions to learn this or to master this.
Right. And as you do that, it does affect everybody around you. It gives them the opportunity to see a different option, to see a different energy, a different choice. So it does aid in it. But again, like Jona said, they may have a tendency to still go there because they need to work on that. So karma is always a process of understanding that if a person chooses a life that is very deprived and very limited, and you may only have a chance to survive to 20 by 5%, they for some reason needed that. There was something in that lifetime of pain and suffering and maybe a lot of illness. They needed that for their overall development. Where other people choose to have lives where they have fairly good intelligence, they live in an area that has fairly good infrastructure and food access and water and so forth. They needed that. There's a difference thing though. So karma is something that we slowly kind of uncover as we go. But we're never going to understand the whole thing. There's just no way. It's not part of our potentiality.
Yeah, just coming back to our children real quick, and maybe also our own childhood. Our children pick their own karma, guys, and they pick you as parents because you bring in stuff
that they need,
they need to have the optimal conditions to transcend this in this lifetime. And I made a remark yesterday where I said there's a commonality that a lot of empaths and energetically sensitives have, and that is that they tend to have a traumatic childhood. And I said something with the chicken and the egg, and it's hard to define which one was there first. If you look at it from an ego perspective, of course, then you think it's all you and just you and all around you. But if you look at it from this karmic perspective that we're offering here, you'll understand that these things, such as the traumas or, maybe even abuse, needed to be there for you to break out of the matrix program at a very early stage in your life so that you could build the confidence that you need to follow your true calling, to really find your true purpose.
Yep.
I can say this clearly about myself. I've written tons of articles about this and interviews, how I see my trauma in my own childhood and how this contributed to me actually being here today. So I am convinced that, and this is only my personal opinion, but that a lot of us energetically sensitives that were born into this life here in the late 20th century had to go through a lot of karma to actually declare themselves as empaths and as healers. Without that trauma, we would not be able to be of optimal service to others. There are generations that are being born into the world right now that do not require this trauma anymore to, say, I want to become an energy healer. These kids, our youngest kid is 4 years old, have a natural understanding of all these things. And they have no problems with seeing the world from an energetic point of view. It's simply not part of their trauma. So don't feel responsible. Karma is larger than you are. If you feel responsible or guilty or whatever, then you're caught in your ego perception.
Yep. Your children use us. Your children use you and use our parents as representations, just like you did. And the opportunities that are there for people who work on themselves is they have a broader perspective and typically slightly more loving. So that gives them greater tools and greater potentiality. And that has usually has an effect on their consciousness level and their chances to break out of things. That's the beauty of that, And it's funny how Jona talks about how the karmic aspects go back 7 generations. There's also a standing rule in psychology that if you don't heal a pattern, let's say abuse or whatever, for 7 generations going forward, by the 7th generation, if it's not completely cleared out, usually the person has psychological issues like psychoticness or neurotic behavior. So it's really interesting how it all ties together.
Yeah, George is asking, is the idea of karma linked to exposure? I'm assuming that you are referring to exposure the way we define it, namely as energetic exposure. Yes, in that it predetermines what kind of exposure you are being born into and what your predominant programming will be. As in conditioning, social conditioning, emotional conditioning, and so forth. However, and I want to point this out here, that this exposure, this predisposition or predetermination that we all pick when incarnating into this life is only there to be transcended. In other words, just like our gender, just like our ethnic background, just like the geographical location that we are born into, just like our zodiac, just like any of these predispositions, they're only there for you to transcend them. And the way to do this, guys, is to find the thread that is there, is to find the pattern that runs everything. And that's why we talked about victimhood yesterday, because this is such a common ego trap to get caught in victimhood and to energize this. If you cannot get past your victimhood, and again, I don't mean any disrespect to some of the traumas that you have experienced, but you will stay trapped in the red zone in your ego. You'll stay trapped in matrix programming, period. You will not be able to move out of this human karmic collective experience or your family karma or your relationship karma. All right, this is very, very important. So if this rubs you the wrong way, that I brush over victimhood, like, get over it, I don't mean it in that way. There is, of course, a place on your journey where you have to work through the trauma, the abuse, the grief that comes with it, the pain. And this is what we do here all day long, okay? Working with people through these things, but only to arrive at a place where you find the empowerment and the courage to get over it, to out-vibrate it, to shift out of it, and to take things into your own hands.
Yes.
All right? Now, of course, there's different dimensions of karmic ties and etheric attachments, which we will just briefly illuminate here today. We have one lesson in which we going to talk about etheric protection and psychic defense for those of you who are interested in the deeper layers of these etheric attachments. But here we really just want to point out that the whole idea of making you aware of your threat, of your karmic threat in your life, is not to show you how much you are bound to it, is to also remind you that you have the power to break through them.
Yes.
But in order to get there, you need to be willing to see yourself not only as a survivor of your victimhood, you have to be willing to see yourself as a thriver. Mm-hmm. And I want to also point out one more thing here. With all these techniques that we are teaching you here and all these energy training lessons and transmissions that we recommend, guys, if you have repetitive stuff come up, meditating it away is not going to make that work. It's not about meditating things away. When I talk about out-vibrating things, I'm not talking about making them go away through fancy energy work techniques. You're going to have to face them. Karma will always come back to you. There is no way you can escape those propensities because it's written into your source code. Okay? Sorry for being so preachery here, but this is a big one for us to understand, especially if you're concerned about matrix programming. So the practical implementation here, I cannot break that down into these different layers for you because we are talking about etheric attachments that are not visible for most of you, but there are some things that you can do, and that is to go into reconciliation with your own karma and to, of course, begin to see these threats and acknowledge them and to admit them, and also as a very big how do you say, like prerequisite to go into the humility of that and see the larger picture, and then to approach your life with maybe a bit more gratitude, you know, and to look at all the experiences of your past as something that brought you here and you needed them to get here. Exactly. And then look back and say thanks to yourself, to your ancestors, to your karma, and say, hey, you know, after all, I'm here now. I'm getting it. You know, I may not see anything yet, but I understand that there is a larger threat, and I honor that, you know, by making peace with it, by not trying to go against it, because this is the reason why you cannot access your true purpose. You're fragmented within and cannot really agree to it.
And as you keep working that, what happens is you begin to rewrite your energy. As you rewrite your energy and you begin to have higher potentiality or higher energy, you have higher potential and you make different choices, and then all of a sudden everything begins to unravel further and more stuff comes up. It's a really beautiful chance, and you begin to get this pattern that Jona talked about early on in the session, where you get used to the repetitive pattern of things coming up, working through them, being patient, staying centered in your energy, and allowing those things to kind of unwind further. It's very beautiful.
Yes, and we could talk hours here just about the subject of karmic relationships, for instance. Karmic relationships is one of the big topics for people when they begin to work with energies. And actually, quite a few people get into this energetic view of things through the experience of a karmic relationship. So a lot of us, you know, don't really care for energy work that much and can't see healing, but you know, we experience these traumatic things with other people over and over again, and that makes us wonder. You know, that's what it did for me. You know, after a not so successful relationship career of myself, to see like no matter who I replace, you know, my partner with, I kind of end up in the same place. It can't be that it's all their fault, right? My ego, of course, saw myself as the victim. But the logic of my mind said, you know, I've lived in different countries, different cultural groups, was together with different kind of people, and somehow I always end up with the same issues. So there's got to be a threat in me, okay? And this is what we want to encourage you here to do on a practical level by beginning to really look at some of these threads. And you can spend or dedicate a meditation session or a contemplation session to it, but I would recommend to you to not go too deep into this. Don't get hooked into the psychic detective work that we've mentioned yesterday either. Don't go and do like 1 year of past life regression. No, this is not going to enable you to see this. It will help you maybe to understand why you have a certain attraction or magnetism to certain people or certain things. But at the end of the day, it's only your ego mind that wants to explain it somehow. It's not important. The thread that I'm talking about is something that you will find in the way you approach your life. Okay. It's very important to understand that there really isn't a good or bad karma, guys. There only is karma or the absence of karma. And the whole purpose of what we are trying to encourage you here is to do active karma work, so that you can diminish the magnetism, the propensities, and these predisposed things, and also your susceptibility to matrix programming coming in from the outside. So it's basically the moment you pay attention to it, the moment you start working with this, it's already the moment when you start dissolving some of these ties. Your homework for tomorrow is going to be to start this list, and also in conjunction with your inventory list that you've been conducting, to come up with a list of people that you feel like you have karmic ties with. Just sort of as a work thing for yourself. You don't know yet what that tie is. You don't need to know. But oftentimes we can feel this. So again, here, this is your subtle feeling. We're talking about etheric ties, okay? And perhaps also places or cultures or subjects. There's things that we can feel karmic ties with that have nothing to do with our present life, but things, such as being attracted to certain cultures or certain teachings, such as Native American teachings, for instance, or being attracted to certain geographical locations. Some people and feel a little deeper into this, what this represents for you. Also, the propensity or the attraction to certain things, such as weird things, like maybe opera, or things that you cannot really explain. They don't have anything to do with your current life. Explore that. That's your homework.
Yes.
All right. And the energy work technique that we are that we have introduced to you here with day 16 is called etheric reconciliation, and basically understanding that there is another layer of energetic ties that you cannot really address with your mind or with your recollection, say, of what happened to you in this lifetime. The energy work or the energy training transmissions that we recommend, this is the energetic clearing session. That is something that can help you tremendously in developing a roadmap for yourself as to, what are some of these persistent patterns that are visible in your energy field that need to be worked on or that need to be removed. So an energetic clearing session can do this for you through using etheric surgery techniques. The karmic relationship clearing, karmic family clearing, and karmic collective clearing are very popular transmissions here at transCODES that introduce a protocol to you how you can work this yourself. All right, and I hope you enjoyed this zoom through a massive and highly controversial subject, namely karma, in conjunction with finding your true purpose here today. I know this was a lot. I spoke fast, and we still went way over time, but thank you for watching, and see us here tomorrow at 1 p.m. on time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Yes. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.